Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about some key concepts that you should probably be aware of, and I think will help you out a lot as you get going to not make certain mistakes and to speed up the timeline of producing your first stop motion animation movie. So basically, beyond the resources we provide, there is literally a ton of different resources online for you to look at. So don't be afraid to dig around, especially if you want to do more in areas like if you're going to do yours with Legos or clay or Play-Doh. There's other resources that will be more specific to what you're doing and I think help out as well. So it's really up to you to do some additional research to help out. And also on Stop Motion Studio, in the actual program, in the project browser, there's a help button that has a ton of information on it. So I'm going to show that to you here. It's in the upper left-hand corner. When you're in this is called the project browser. When you're in there, that help button right here will take you to literally a ton of information about how to edit, how to do a lot of things. So I would check there first without searching too far. Remember, there's no right or wrong to this. There's no good or bad. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't worry about how cool it looks, especially with your first project. Kind of get through it and make it work out and get it in, and you'll learn a lot just in that first project. It becomes a lot easier after you've done one or two. So don't worry about being perfect the first time. Yeah, just do your best. That's all we're asking. You'll do a great job if that's all you're following. The other thing is to be creative and have fun with it. It's very important. Like anything, if you put some heavy thought into it and put some passion into things and have fun with it, you're going to produce a good project. Other things is, like I said earlier, just be patient. You're learning something new, so it's going to take a little bit of time, and especially since you're doing it from home and we're not in class together, where you can get some direct help. We're expecting that you use your iPad, but you can use your phone. So it's up to you, whichever one you prefer. There's pros and cons to both, but you can use either if you want. The first movie that you're going to produce is designed to be pretty straightforward and pretty simple, so you can get through it and learn the basics without stressing out too much. From here, basically what should have happened already is you should have watched the video about stop motion and how to use Stop Motion Studio. You should hopefully have decided what type of stop motion, whether you're doing clay, Play-Doh, pixelation, whatever you're going to do. And then the next thing really that's super important and sometimes gets overlooked is creating some type of story you're going to tell with your movie. And I want to talk about that for just a little bit here. There's a lot of things that kind of go into it. It seems simple sometimes, especially when you're only producing a animation that's 20, 30 seconds long, but there's a lot of information that's being packed into there. So it's important to think about what story you want to do in your animation. Make sure that it's feasible, that you have the materials at home to do that, and then be creative, let your mind run. It's not designed and doesn't need to be complicated, but if you brainstorm and give it some thought ahead of time, before you even begin, you're going to save yourself a lot of extra work. Here's just a quick example. In my story here, there will be a man walking his dog in the park and throwing a ball for the dog to fetch, but the ball goes all the way around the world and hits the man in the back of the head. If that's the case, what I've done here is kind of started to write that down here in a storyline. So the storyline is important just to help you remind yourself the flow, okay, the sequence, and maybe some other visuals that have to go into that. So anything can happen. That's the great part about you creating it. It doesn't have to be logical. It can be silly, it can be fun, it can be crazy, interesting, creative, all those things. So there's two different ways you can do it in stop motion. You can either write it out like I just talked about, or you can storyboard it. And storyboard is basically sketching frame by frame, if you will, or at least every couple frames and talking about what the story is doing. So it allows you to visualize that. And again, I'm going to say this probably several times in this video. It's my advice and important. I feel that if you don't plan this out ahead of time, you're going to do a lot of work in the editing part, and that's going to waste a lot of time. So if you think this out ahead of time, you're gonna have a very successful process, which means going through it, taking the pictures, doing the editing, and the story is going to come out great. Whether you do it as a story written out or as a storyboard doesn't matter to us, but I would give that some thought. Start with a script, Think about what you want to communicate. Again, whether you write it out in a story form, think about the introduction, think about the character or characters and what the film is going to say. And then you can develop those elements as you go further into the story. And then make sure there's some type of conclusion or ending to it. So it's very much like writing any story, on paper. As I said, I visualize, which I like. I think about things. I try to see how it's going to look. Both, with all the parts, the intro, the development, and into the conclusion. So I kind of know what I want to do, and that also might help me with things like, do I want to move the camera at all? Am I going to have wide angle shots, any specific detail shots? So I'd know that ahead and would have sketched that out or written notes out for that. Again, you're trying to capture motion here, so keep that in mind as you think about things in the storyline and how you might want to capture those things. Once you've got the story created, then bottom line is you got to get all kind of the structure to it. And the structure would be your studio and the materials. Some key points about the studio is make sure you find it or put it on a table that is sturdy and doesn't wobble, because you're going to have issues of movement. Maybe it's in a room by itself if that's possible. Make sure the lighting in there is done with a lamp, not through the window, because the daylight will change and flicker. A lot of times people will use a backdrop, a sheet or something, or a large piece of paper, just so that the items in the background don't distract from the movie. You don't have to do that. Minimize camera movement, and whether it's an iPad or a phone of some sort, make sure it's secure. And you can make a mount for it. Your case a lot of times has a very stable mount that holds up. So it's really key to not have things moving around or being jittery, because it's going to affect the movie. So as far as what you need, we've talked about need to have a story. You got the materials, you set up your studio. Then as far as inside, these are things that were talked about in the video on how to use stop motion, but you need to be set at 12 frames per second. The camera mode should be set at AL automatic lock. And I make sure to play the video back very often. These, even while you're going through it, it just helps you think about things and see things differently. So, taking 10 or 15 or 20 frames and watching it and adjusting it. Generally, you're going to edit afterwards, but playing it back often is a big key. Remember that you should be doing the editing after you've captured most of your footage as far as the frames. And then when you click on them, each one you can edit. And that was talked about in learning how to use Stop Motion Studio. You can pause for a period of time. That's what you're seeing here. You can delete frames again. You can copy and paste new frames. You could select a sequence of frames. There's just a lot of things you can do. So, and the editing is something that is best done afterwards, but before you do the audio, because if you change the frame or the length, you're going to affect your audio. And that's what we're coming to here, is the adding the audio. The audio helps a lot of the times with connecting the story or giving it an emotion. The first project that you're doing doesn't require audio, though you can have it. So sometimes the audio is simply music. Sometimes it's sounds that you make or capture. Sometimes it's narration or characters speaking. Sometimes it's all of those. So again, you can use the record function, which is right here. You can record that and add that in, especially on your second and third project for sure. And lastly, when you're all done, if you watch the movie several times and you like how it plays out and all the audio is synced the way it's supposed to be, then you're going to go into the project browser where you keep your videos. You're going to go up here and there's a selection tool and you're going to export that movie. And there's a tutorial, a video we put up for that as well. Pretty straightforward, but basically you're saving it to your camera roll or where your photos are. And that's how you're going to be able to go into Schoology and then upload that into Schoology and turn it in that way. That's probably most of it in a nutshell. Good luck. You can get started now. And if you have any questions, surely let us know.